You're listening to an archived Cabral Concept podcast. After listening to this show, check out the most up-to-date podcasts available at stephencabral.com/podcasts or search directly on iTunes. And now, welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Today on our Total Wellness Tuesday, we're going to be talking about how we can treat digestive issues with fiber. So this is going to be a fairly detailed show. It's going to be for anyone with digestive issues, anyone who wants to improve their digestion and absorption of nutrients for better skin, better overall wellness, all of the mood-based issues that go along with it as well, which I'll talk about today. And also, it's going to be used for metabolism. It's going to be used for overall anti-aging based purposes. So you'll be able to get a lot out of this show. I want to really make it specific so that you can use it, your health practitioners can use it as well, and everyone will find a little bit of something in it, but you may have to listen to it a couple times just to go over the specific protocols that I give you from my exact practice. So let's get right into it, because I won't make it a long show so that you can listen to it multiple times if needed. So you've heard me speak about fiber before and the very important benefits of it. So the last time I spoke about fiber was on episode 355. I spoke about in terms of cardiovascular health, blood pressure, digestive, metabolism, weight loss, all of those specific things. And so do tune back in, because I'm not going to rehash that show just because it was about 12 minutes in and of itself. So I don't want to go back into what are the different types of fiber. I do hope that you're listening to back shows of the Cabral Concept. But if you want to know more about fiber and insoluble fiber and soluble fiber, please do look back at the show, because I teach you which ones to use for which health conditions. But we're going to be talking about digestion today. So fiber in general comes from plants. That's where we're getting our fiber from. Some is insoluble, just a quick overview. And that means we can't really break it down in our gut. It's important though, it really is. So insoluble fiber is important as well. And soluble fiber is fiber that we can actually break down and that we can utilize in our gut. The third type of fiber isn't actually fiber in itself, but acts like fiber. So it's called resistant starch. So resistant starch, as I said before, acts like a type of fiber. Okay? What it does is this. It moves into the gut, and it can be partially broken down or not, depending on its reaction within the gut. And it comes from things like oats. It comes from rice. It comes from unripened bananas, like green bananas. And that, when they cool, so basically when the oats or the rice cool, and then obviously green bananas, when it has that green tip, it allows for this resistant starch to actually be utilized by your gut in a different way as when the bananas or the oats are fully cooked and warm. So what happens is this. The resistant starch can actually act like a prebiotic in the gut. So right before I get to that prebiotic in the gut, because that's where I'm going next, resistant starch also helps to better regulate insulin. It helps with blood sugar. So a lot of people are using it in practice and then also with themselves as a way to better regulate blood sugar. So it is helpful in that way. I'm not a big advocate necessarily of supplementing with resistant starch, but we can get enough in our diet from resistant starch sources as well. And you can check those out too. So where I want to go next is I want to talk about how fiber actually feeds the gut bacteria. So this is important for a few reasons. When you feed gut bacteria, you allow it to grow. And now this is a really great thing. So here's why. So insoluble fiber, so again, they both work, but insoluble fiber has been studied and it is very helpful in the prevention of IBS, constipation, diverticulitis, and hemorrhoids. So the reason is it provides a lot of bulk to your stool. And this bulk as well helps with the peristaltic movement. And it helps usher and move the stool down your small intestine and large intestine. When this happens, the actual bacteria which sits and resides in your gut, a lot of it being negative as well, is able to be moved out. It's not going to be reabsorbed back into your bloodstream, which can cause a host of different issues like skin issues, fatigue, and other issues. But it can also cause fermentation inside of the gut. Now, the problem with this is when constipation or candida, or someone's taken antibiotics or birth control or NSAIDs like Advil, or they've drank alcohol, any number of things, bad bacteria can start to overgrow. Candida, which is a yeast, can start to overgrow. You may have gotten parasites. Any of these things, especially the bacterial overgrowth, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, like SIBO, or yeast, is also fed by prebiotics, is also fed by certain fibers, and it's fed by sugars as well. That also comes with the same food that contains those fibers, such as fructans. So fructans that we know comes from, let's just say, artichokes or leeks or garlic or onion or wheat-based products or larger amounts of Brussels sprouts or cauliflower. Again, these are all pretty good things for us, right? Well, exception of wheat. But the problem is, if you've already become imbalanced, you can't take the generic information that says that you need a lot of fiber in your diet for gut health. Now, if you have a healthy gut, yes, load up on that good fiber. Women should be at 35 grams or more per day. Men should be at 40 grams or more per day. That has been shown to help mitigate a lot of these cardiovascular-based issues that we're seeing. And since that up there, number two of causes of death, very important to get enough fiber. However, if you're someone that currently suffers from IBS, Crohn's, colitis, candida overgrowth, SIBO overgrowth, parasites, anything else that I've missed that's causing gas, bloating, indigestion, any of those things, you can't just jump into using all of these soluble fibers, insoluble fibers, resistant starches, and prebiotics. And the reason is simple. The reason is this, that those same good things will feed all bacteria in the gut. And when that happens, you also feed the yeast. You also feed the bacterial pathogens, which is why we use specific foods to eliminate over a period of about 6 weeks to 8 weeks or so before they get reintroduced. Those foods are the ones higher in fructans. They're the ones higher in xyloglucans, in arabinoxylans, and in or exoxylans, and ones that are high in hemicellulose. Those aren't just ones that we're going to want to use in the beginning. The reason is this. The reason is a lot of them aren't specific, which means they will feed all types of bacteria. They will feed yeast. And when the gut is balanced, this is a beautiful thing. You're going to use garlic. You're going to use onions. You're going to use all of these great things that do contain fructans, that do contain fibers to feed the good bacteria. But here's what we need to do first. Here's what we need to understand. And this goes for health practitioners as well as every consumer out there listening. Is that first, we need to remove the pathogens. So if you're currently suffering from anything that causes gas, bloating, any type of indigestion, or you suspect that you might have SIBO, or you suspect that you might have candida overgrowth, we need to remove those first. So you go through a protocol that's about 12 weeks long. That 12 weeks allows for complete removal of all of those base pathogens, or enough, meaning like your gut is always supposed to have some yeast, some candida, some bacterial overgrowth like E. coli. That's actually always supposed to be there. And it can do some very helpful things for our body. It's when it overgrows, when you get something called gut dysbiosis, which is an imbalance in good to bad bacteria, then that leads to all of these poor health-based conditions. It leads to that intestinal permeability, the immune-based reactions that can then lead to the autoimmune-based issues as well. Because remember, 80% of the immune system is located right outside of this gut wall. And in the gut wall, remember, those immune cells can go right into your intestines, right through the lamina propria, and then also work on creating inflammatory-based destruction to the tissues while inside the small intestine. So it goes both ways. So very important to keep that in mind. So what am I saying is this. First, remove the pathogens, the yeast, the bacterial overgrowth. Then, very strategically, begin to reintroduce the good foods. Remember, you're not supposed to be on the FODMAP plan, an elimination-based diet, forever. You're not supposed to reduce the garlic and the cauliflower for the rest of your life. You should remove it as needed for a period of about 6 to 8 weeks. After that time, we begin to reintroduce one at a time. We see how your body does. And so after we're doing that, we're then selectively using food as a prebiotic. Remember, I see no need to take a prebiotic supplement. Your prebiotics will come from nature. You will get them from the celery, from the cauliflower, from the Brussels sprouts, from the cruciferous space vegetables. You'll get them from that. You're good with that. And at the same time as you're doing that, remember, you need to be adding back in the good strains of bacteria. So first, you do something like our Candida and bacterial overgrowth protocol. After that, you do a gut rebuilding protocol, seal up that gut wall, and you should also be introducing then these good probiotics. Now, at this time, they should not cause the gas. They should not cause the bloating. Why? Because it's at this point, you now know these foods that formerly caused gas and bloating are no longer, and here's the reason why. They are now feeding all bacteria, yes, but now you have more good bacteria than bad bacteria. You now have more good yeast than bad yeast and all the different strains. Again, because yeast is not just Candida albicans. There's other strains of yeast as well, other families of yeast, all, I should say, within the Candida-based family. But you have more good than bad. The yeast now has its place. It is not overgrown. So when this happens, you can then eat all of these good forms of fiber, the soluble fiber, the insoluble fiber, the resistant starches, the prebiotics, the fructans, all of the different sugars. I'm not going to go through all of them right now because I can see eyes starting to glaze over. But what you'll want to do first is, again, follow that protocol. Remove the pathogens. Start to add back in the good ones, the good strains of bacteria, and then feed them with those good prebiotics and fiber. When you do this, then you will have a healthy gut for life. If you suffered from IBS in the past or any of the bowel-based issues, and again, bacterial overgrowth, all of those included, you'll now maintain a healthy gut microbiome, which will allow you to then eat foods again from a different array. Remember, I've worked with people who could only eat literally like 4 or 5 different foods. That's no exaggeration. They knew they could eat these 4 or 5 foods that wouldn't cause them to throw up after the meal, that wouldn't cause them to have loose bowel movements, aka diarrhea, and then be able to go back to work. These people now are functioning like normal, healthy children and adults, okay? That happens once you remove and rebalance the gut microbiome, get rid of that bad bacteria, get rid of that bad yeast, and then put the good strains back in, feed them, allow them to grow, and then they take off on their own. That's the really nice thing about it. Okay. That's enough for today. I believe that hopefully provided a good foundation of how using fiber selectively, when to use it, how to use it, and then obviously how much. Again, I should say this as well. When you're reintroducing fiber, start with a half a cup of a high fiber food per meal. Don't just jump right into it with 2 cups at a time, because even though you might do fine with it, sometimes it's the dose, right? So start smaller, work your way up, and then you'll allow that gut to also get used to having to digest this good fiber as well. Work your way up then to 35 plus grams per day of fiber, not all at one meal, of course. Try to get 10 grams or so per meal. When you're doing that, you're going to be nice, healthy, and balanced. If there are any questions to this podcast, please do let me know, whether it's from a health practitioner level or whether it's from a patient-based level, okay? You can just ask at stephencabral.com/ask Cabral. Thank you, as always, for tuning in, and please do feel free to share this particular episode with anyone dealing with digestive-based issues who's debating on whether they should be eating carbohydrates, whether they should be eating high-fiber carbs, or whatever it might be. Thank you once again for tuning in. Did you know that the body really only becomes sick or imbalanced in only 2 ways? Over time, you become deficient in vital nutrients, and you also accumulate toxins internally and from the environment. As those nutrients diminish and you increase your total toxic load, your body then begins to show the first signs of dis-ease. It's actually quite predictable, and the good news is that if we know how you began to fill up that proverbial rain barrel, we also know how to empty it to begin the healing process. I was fortunate enough to learn this ancient healing process from my mentor after suffering from debilitating diseases for close to a decade. It was only when I began to implement these techniques did I finally overcome my illnesses and go on to live a life of energy and vitality that I now enjoy. I'd like to share with you now what I discovered after traveling all over the world and how to combine the best of ancient healing wisdom with state-of-the-art science. Allow me to teach you exactly how I've been able to help over 250,000 people to empty their rain barrel and begin to transform their body and lives into what they've always hoped they could be. To get your copy of the international bestseller, The Rain Barrel Effect, simply go to stephencabral.com/rainbarrel.